Hello, my name is Dana Hagemeyer, and I'm the school nurse at Harding Elementary. I've been a nurse there for approximately 5 years, and I decided to do my quality improvement project on educators' well-being. So I implemented a well-being project that focused on specifically secondary traumatic stress and ways that educators could incorporate mindfulness and self-care practices into their daily routine. So the problem was that educators are at increased risk of experiencing secondary traumatic stress via interactions with their students who have experienced trauma. So primary trauma is specifically looking at direct exposure to physical, emotional, sexual abuse, neglect, family member passing away, an incarcerated parent, homelessness, where secondary traumatic stress is exposure to others who have experienced that stress or that trauma. And as educators, they have students in their class that experience trauma, and with continued exposure to those students can increase their risk of secondary traumatic stress. And as it year after year it continues to build, and a lot of educators don't recognize that these signs and symptoms are present or even what it is. So my goal was to develop a well-being program that encompassed mental and physical health while also bringing awareness to secondary traumatic stress. In summary, the aim of my project was to improve physical and emotional well-being of educators, bring awareness to secondary traumatic stress, focusing on self-care and mindfulness activities, while also providing resources within the community for educators or family members who are in need of mental health services. I had used the professional quality of life scale. I used that in January prior to implementing my project. And that looked at compassion satisfaction, burnout, and secondary traumatic stress. All levels within Harding Elementary were at the moderate level. However, 86% scored at the moderate level for secondary traumatic stress, and that's specifically what I had looked at. 75% of educators also had scored one or more on their ACEs survey, as the national average is about 61%. So it was a little bit on the higher side. So that's just saying that educators had experienced an adverse childhood event. So the educators are already coming in with primary trauma and then being exposed to secondary trauma. 1 in 7 children have experienced abuse or neglect. And in my school, educators have an average 20 to 25 students in their classroom. So they're caring for several students that may be experiencing trauma at home. The National Association is aware of the mental health crisis, and there's been a 37% increase in educators leaving the position. According to the National Association of Schoolmasters Union of Women Teachers, it was found that 65% of educators reported that their well-being was not addressed. They did not feel that the school was addressing the importance of their mental health and that their job was negatively impacted by it. So the team that I worked with was rather small. It was myself and the school counselor. We discussed ways to implement mindfulness activities in a way that educators did not feel overwhelmed or stressed by the weekly emails that were sent out. And also the principal and assistant principal provided more of the leadership role in the project along with myself in continuing to get educators on board, allowing me to speak at staff meetings, and standing behind myself and my project. So I think it is important that we addressed why secondary traumatic stress. How is that different than burnout or compassion fatigue? So compassion fatigue and secondary traumatic stress kind of go hand in hand. But some symptoms that educators can have are distressing thoughts about their students, thinking about them and worrying about them outside school hours, feeling hopelessness and guilty that they didn't do more. The educators are with their students for several hours a day for 9 months out of the year. So they really develop relationships with their students. And as the school year continues and trauma becomes an issue, it can really weigh on educators. They begin to have problems concentrating, unable to sleep, or having dreams about their students. As educators become needing a break, they begin to call off. So then there's absenteeism that causes increased costs to the district to find a substitute, and then it ends in the educator leaving the position. There was one educator in my school who was actually leaving the position due to mental health concerns that had been admitted during the school year, and really addressed the importance of my program through emails, and as he left the district, also encouraging others to really understand the mental health crisis, and to really focus on themselves and practice self-care. The strategies that I used for my project, I spoke at the staff meeting prior to implementing the program, and I developed a well-being guide for educators that addressed specific instructions on meditation, journaling, creating a space of beauty, yoga, physical exercises, just so that they could pick one and kind of stick with it. Or if they had wanted to try out different ones, that all the directions and information would be in one area. It also had resources where they could go for apps on their phone, different websites for exercising, and then also resources within the community that provide mental health services. The well-being calendar was utilized for educators to circle the mindfulness practice that was utilized and track their miles ran and weight lifted. And there was also an area to write their BMI and weight prior to and after the program, and an area for blood pressure. Weekly emails were sent out and included a chapter from the Teacher Wise. It's a handbook that addresses well-being in educators. There was a weekly survey that one week we did stress, another health awareness, well-being awareness, and the Myers-Briggs personality assessment. There was a TED Talk each week pertaining to the topic, and then a read receipt was used to track how many educators opened their email, and then I organized a walk, run, hike at the end of the month. So there was 50% participation in educators reading their emails, 16% returned their well-being calendars, and 36% returned the surveys. So the professional quality of life survey, the stress level, the secondary traumatic stress was still moderate, however decreased slightly from 30 to 25%. The Polish stress survey, ironically enough, the highest score was in students and their challenging behaviors. And the lowest score in the well-being survey was physical and emotional well-being. So there continues to be a need for a well-being program to be implemented within the school. Overall, there was 15% who completed the post-evaluation, and 89% of the educators put in satisfactory to excellent work into the program. They would recommend the program for other educators, and they had perceived knowledge in skills, secondary traumatic stress, and well-being, along with the calendar really being successful in completing the program and keeping them motivated. 13% completed the post professional quality improvement quality of life assessment. And as I said, the scores had stayed in the moderate level but had decreased from 30 to 25. the future of the well-being program going into the next school year, I do plan to develop a calendar for educators to keep track of their mileage, their weight lifted, and continue to track those throughout the school year. And then we will follow the Appalachian Trail from the beginning to the end as educators continue to implement their well-being practices and to encourage other educators to get on board and to join us, and then have monthly awareness on different self-care activities throughout the year. Also partnering with Penn State Hershey, who we are in collaboration with for our physicals, for our mandated screenings, and hopefully they will be able to partner with us in coming in and educating staff on professional development days, or just holding some mindfulness, meditation, yoga classes, and then also monitoring student progress throughout the year. So tracking their reading and math scores from the beginning of the year to the end, and how many educators and what educators specifically that were implementing practices, and looking at those classrooms compared to those that were not implementing mindfulness or self-care practices. And then also I would like to continue my education in becoming a wellness coach so I can help educators who come down and maybe just need someone to talk to, or to continue to hold a more professional level for educators. So I look forward to continuing my project. This is the first PDSA cycle, and I look forward to seeing what the future has to hold. So thank you for watching.